Good morning and welcome to the webinar by the Malaysian Chamber of Commerce, Hong Kong and Macau. My name is Lawrence Liu. I'm the Deputy Chairman for the Malaysian Chamber of Commerce of Hong Kong and Macau. And obviously we're based in Hong Kong. And the reason now that I need to base, I mentioned I need to base in Hong Kong because today we have quite a number of attendees who are coming in from, calling in from Malaysia as well as in China. And today we are very honored today to have Mr. Heng Gui, who is going to present to us the topic, can Malaysia weather the perfect storm? So as you know, with the change in the government and the COVID-19, it actually sent Malaysia into the perfect storm. So we would like, a lot of people or friends of us in Hong Kong, obviously are very concerned of the situation in Malaysia. And henceforth, we were looking for someone that can actually shed the light for us and see what's really happening in Malaysia. And we are very happy that Mr. Lee has agreed to present to us on this subject. Before I move over, I would like to sort of explain what MAYCHAM is. MAYCHAM was formed in 2014 by a group of Malaysian businessmen in Hong Kong. And there are about 20,000 Malaysians in Hong Kong. Is obviously an unofficial numbers. And Malaysia has been in Hong Kong for many, many years, many decades. There are a lot of large corporates as well owned by Malaysians as well in Hong Kong. And I think we are quite a significant player among the ASEAN countries, especially ASEAN countries in Hong Kong. And today I'm going to start off with make introductions later on by the Consul General of Malaysia, Mr. Will Yap, followed by our Chairman, Dr. Gant, and our Deputy Chairman, Mr. Song Hoi Si. Before I go to that, I'm going to introduce our speaker today, Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee is an economist. He is, to me, an economist with a lot of banking experience. He used to work for Bank Negara and CIMB. And today, he is now with the Executive Director of the Social Economic Research Center, an independent research center funded by the Association Chinese Chamber of Commerce Industries of Malaysia. And he is also the investment committee members of the Opus Asset Management Center of Berhad. I think with my understanding of his role in this ASEAN, which is the one of the largest chamber in Malaysia, is basically focusing a lot on the SMEs in Malaysia, which is basically a cornerstones of the economic of Malaysia. He has received many awards. He was voted the best economist in the Edge Post twice and ranked top 3 times from 2000 to 2008. Best economist by the SS Magazine Hong Kong, local currency bond market of Malaysia 2007. He also led the CIMB macroeconomy research to be ranked among top 3 for 9 consecutive years in the Asian Money polls. Mr. Lee holds a BA Honours major in economics from the University of Malaya and a master's degree in development economics from the Williams College, USA. And firstly, I'm going to now introduce our Consul General of Malaysia, Mr. Will Yap, because many Malaysians in Hong Kong have not seen his face for a while because of the COVID-19, and of course with our social problems 7 months last year. So I'm going to pass over to Mr. Will Yap.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. I think everyone can hear me, yes? So good morning. Thank you to MAYCHAM, Hong Kong and Macau for inviting me to say a few words at the start of this webinar. Now, firstly, I'd like to commend MAYCHAM for organizing this event. The topic, can Malaysia brace the perfect storm? It's dramatic, but it's very timely. You know, Malaysia, like other economies in the world today, is faced with a lot of challenges. So today, MAYCHAM has gotten hold of a distinguished and experienced Malaysian economist in Mr. Heng Gui, to give his views on this topic. So thank you, Mr. Lee, for taking the time to join us today. You know, Malaysia is a trading nation. Trade is our lifeblood. We have to contend with US-China trade tensions, as well as other external factors. You know, we are also a net exporter of oil, so global oil prices are very important to us. So, and add to that the COVID-19 pandemic and supply chain disruptions. So as you can see, the challenges on the horizon are quite formidable. You know, you have read that Malaysia eked out a 0.7% growth in Q1 2020, while many expected a contraction. So at least this is encouraging, you know, but let's see what Q2 has in store. Apart from external factors, you know, how much Malaysia gets back on track will also depend on progress in how we reopen our economy under the conditional MCO. I think that should be enough for me at the moment. You know, like the participants in this webinar, we are all here for Mr. Lee. So I very much look forward to hearing your insights. So once again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you too to MAYCHAM for your efforts in promoting Malaysian business interests, as well as generating greater awareness about Malaysia, both in Hong Kong and Macau. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul General. Dr. Gan, please.
Selamat pagi, Malaysian friends and Malaysians. Thank you for coming into our first webinar for the year. And thank you, Consul General, for the lively speech. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for giving us your good experience and thoughts about the Malaysian economy. I would like to take a few minutes to let our listeners know about MAYCHAM. Like all Chamber of Commerce, we started in Hong Kong about 6 years ago, mainly to help Malaysian companies in Hong Kong, Malaysian companies doing business in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong's people in the region, including Macau and the Greater Bay Area, to trade and invest in Malaysia. We have an additional role which we took on a few years ago, and that is to help Malaysian students in Hong Kong. So far, we have started the MAYCHAM Student Fund, and we have raised more than 8 million Hong Kong, close to 5 million ringgit, to help Malaysian students who live and study in Hong Kong because of the higher living expenses. So far, we have close to 40-50 students benefiting from this program. And recently, only yesterday, I have got a friend from the US asking me to sort how to import rubber gloves from Malaysia. So Malaysia is actually getting into the thick of business activities. And as you know, Malaysia exports or manufactures about 2/3 of the world's rubber gloves. So this is only one product. I'm sure there are many more that Malaysia can excel in the international trade. So we would like to hear from Mr. Lee more about this in the changing world economy. And lastly, I wish you all an entertainment and insightful talk from Mr. Lee. And thank you very much again for giving us your time. Thank you. I would now like to invite our Deputy Chairman, Mr. Song Hoi Si, who is actually here to raise more awareness about MAYCHAM's membership and the benefits of being a member. So any one of you listening in and would like to be a member, or your friends would like to be a member too, please listen to the great Mr. Song. He's the most popular guy in the airport private lounges industry, the best in the world and the biggest.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dato, for the sort of do of MAYCHAM and also Dato Lawrence. First, I'd like to welcome all of you to this webinar. I know there's a lot of non-members as well. By the way, if those people who not know me, I'm Song Hoi Si. I'm the founder of the Plaza Premium Group. Now I'm speaking to you now as the deputy chairman, and also I'm in charge of memberships. So allow me to have about 2 or 3 minutes to sell MAYCHAM to all of you. In fact, if you do not know MAYCHAM, in fact, we every month, apart from COVID-19, where we have social distancing, in fact, we have every month or every week at least one function, basically. The most prominent one is every first week of the Monday, we have a social gathering or happy hour in JW Marriott's. And apart from that, we organize a lot of activity, outing activity, visiting countries. When we're visiting Malaysia, we always have the sort of the senior minister meeting us, and also we visit sort of any activity in China as well. And apart from that, obviously, you are durian lover. You must stay in tune with us. We already organize durians sort of function as well. And plus also, we have other activity. But allow me to say a very quick word about on the survey that we recently carry out with MAYCHAM. And I must tell you that we received a very, very high satisfactory level underpin the MAYCHAM's mission as an organization for business and social networking, where members actually like it, enjoy it. And so I don't want all of the Malaysians who have not been a member to miss out these opportunities. And obviously we know that we have a lot of room to improve. And yes, we can organize a lot of activity, but we need a lot of members, especially Malaysians in Hong Kong, to join us. So please don't miss out this opportunity. It's the best networking you can find in Hong Kong among the Malaysians sort of the communities. So last, I'd like to gentle reminder that AGM will take place in JW Marriott's ballroom on June the 4th. Whether you're a member or non-members, please do come and join us. You will see how we function, our activity. We have all the ESCO to report all the activities, and it will be very fun for us to come in. Please come and join us. Okay, I'll leave this to the floor again. Oh, by the way, the agent is June the 8th. I'm sorry, June the 8th. Please come and join us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Song. So for those who have not signed up as a member, please do. And I'm going to talk a little bit of logistics on the agenda for today. Mr. Lee is going to start once I finish this. He's going to present for 45 minutes, and then we'll be followed by a Q&A. In the past, we feel that the Q&A session has always been a very interesting session because people want to know, and there are specific subjects that they want to talk about. So I'm going to break, the Q&A is going to be 13 minutes, and please do send in your questions to your device, and then I would then post the questions to Mr. Lee, and we will spend 15 minutes on that. And thereafter, I'm going to open up to every participants to post the questions, posting the question directly verbally to Mr. Lee. So we would have interactive actions in the second half of the 15 minutes. So this will be the model that we're going to adopt for today. So thank you very much for joining us. And I'd like to thank again Mr. C.G. Yap and our chairman, Mr. Gan, and Mr. Song for introducing MAYCHAM. And Mr. Lee, once again, thank you very much. And I'm now going to pass over the mic to Mr. Lee. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. Thank you, MAYCHAM. I want to share the slide Can you hear me? Hello? Okay. Can I share the slide?
You need to share screen, Mr. Lee. Share
Yes, yes,
screen.
yes. Okay. Is it okay? Can you see the screen? Hello?
Yes, we can, Mr. Lee.
Can,
Yes.
Is
Yes, we
it big
can.
enough
You want
for
to
you
put in
to
the
see?
slide mode, it's easy to read. Turn into
Okay,
slide mode.
Sorry. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, I shall start now. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the MAYCHAM, the Malaysian Chamber of Commerce, Hong Kong, Macau, for inviting me this morning to talk about the topic about what Malaysia can do or can brace the perfect storm. I think we are in a perfect storm, not just that coming from COVID-19, but also Malaysia being a high revenue oil dependent economy, given the oil price has collapsed, though recent days we saw some pickup in the oil prices that will also impact on the government ability to fund the fiscal deficit. I think my outline for today, I'll be talking about a brief one on the state of global economy and where are we now for Malaysia, and focus a lot on the impact of the COVID-19 on the economy and business sector, which I will share with you some of the survey on the ground and also some of the survey from the ACCIM, our private think tank, which we have conducted among our members, and to get a feel on the ground what had happened so far. And lastly, to share with you some of the immediate and short-term and medium-term plan that are in place now, which I think the first one will be short-term recovery plan will be announced by the Prime Minister on 1st June afternoon. That will be a short-term recovery plan cover from the month of June until year end before they come out a comprehensive one, the midterm, and also the budget 2021 that will be tabled sometime in early November. Okay, just a quick one on the global economy. I think obviously we saw some of the numbers has continued to decelerate sharply, and global economy already set for historical contraction. And I think the global economy is facing very extraordinary type of global pandemic inflicted crisis, yeah, where we saw activity had grounded to halt, and also the non-essential business sector has fallen sharply. And though some country has started to reopen the economy in stages, but the impact in terms of how lasting the impact and how fast the recovery will depend on a few things. The first thing is how effective the fiscal and monetary policy and the stimulus to sustain the recovery, and how normalized the consumer and business back to the normal after the COVID-19. I think for sure, a lot of countries are still wary, in particular consumer and business. They are still trying to find what is the balancing point in terms of getting the economy back into traction. I think my assessment here is that the recovery will be quite long, and I'm looking at a long U shape. And I think we may see some tentative signs of recovery towards the end of this year, the 4Q. Maybe the earliest will be 3Q, depends on how fast the consumers' confidence will come back and return to somewhat normal. But I think all of us have to prepare that we are in a very new normal condition, which may be normalized after a while, okay? So in terms of scenario, as you can see, my base case scenario, I'm looking at growth, GDP, global growth is -3%. And hopefully by next year, we can see a pickup, a reversal from a negative to +3 to 3.5. That's a base case scenario. But if the downside risks continue, if there is a deeper global recession, if there is a second wave of the COVID-19, or even they are talking about you may see a new peak before the second wave coming, as warned by the WHO. You may see a much more deeper recession, about -5%, and the recovery will be longer given the ineffective monetary and fiscal policy. I think the two things here is about how effective the monetary policy and fiscal stimulus will drive the recovery. As you know, the interest rate has pushed down to near zero, even QE, but whether this is whether they are enough or not, whether the consumer are already falling into what you call a depression state, where they become so immune despite the interest rate is negative. Yeah. So now, on the latest scenario, if you look at the latest now, we can see growth in the advanced economy, emerging economy, and either slow down sharply or even contracted. This is what happened now in the first quarter. I think in the advanced economy, it's very large. We saw very large and timely policy responses, but unfortunately, the labor market, unemployment rate had surged to a new high, even higher than since the 1930 global depression, and the lockdown has shuttered the economic activities. In terms of the regional side, you can see Malaysia is the one had somewhat surprised the market. We managed to grow about 0.7%, but that is only the partial effect from the MCO lockdown. I believe the second quarter will be significant contraction, yeah, which I'll go through with you later. And look at China and Hong Kong had suffered a sharp economic contraction, which I think China was the first country that reopened, and I believe the number will start to see a shallow contraction. In fact, for the first time this year, in decades, that the China authority of Beijing can't even pin down what is the target growth for this year, which is boils down to the fact that there's still much uncertainty, which even the China government find hard to give a projected GDP target. So now, in terms of the frequency data, I think we started to see some of the lockdown effect taken a hit on the high frequency data, like your composite leading index, your PMI for manufacturing and services. You can see from the chart there, the services index has plunged to significantly low. And the world trade, the latest number forecast by the WTO, expect the world trade to decline between 13 to 32%. It's a wide range. It shows how uncertain on the external side in terms of the impact of the COVID, given the disruption on the supply chain and also the demand shocks. One thing that I noticed, there is a silver lining for the semiconductor industry, partly because there is still a demand medical equipment for the consumer industry use, and there's a lot of upgrades on the IT data solution, and also the 5G technology coming into place, and that may have a shallow contraction in global semiconductor sales. So this is a silver lining that we are watching now, whether that will help to ease the sharp contraction in the exports of most of the emerging economy, which they export a lot of E&E sector, including Malaysia. So in terms of crude oil prices, as I mentioned just now, it is something that we continue to watch closely for those who are net exporting oil country. And fortunately, we saw the oil price, Brent crude had collapsed to near 10 or $20 and now has recovered back to about $33 per barrel. So at this level, I'm looking at a forecast between $25 to $35 per barrel for this year, and crude palm oil prices are still on the mend. Yeah? In terms of, I think the price outlook for CPO, I'm looking about between 2,150 ringgit, partly because there's still less incentive for the blending of palm oil, and secondly, the demand, edible oil demand will be much lower given the less people are moving around traveling, and also most of them are eating at home and less going to restaurant, and partly the supply will likely to increase because of the better weather conditions. So in terms of monetary firepower, the question I ask is about whether it worked this time round. If you look at this time round, if you compare to 2008, 2009, we always say that it's too big to fail crisis. But this round is too many to fail version. Why? Central bank need to pump more liquidity in the banking system, push the interest near historical zero level or even negative, or do a new round of QE. Even like conservative country like New Zealand, Australia also went into QE. So I think the effect is to prevent the collapsing of firms because of this shock from the pandemic side, plus the demand and supply shocks. And a lot of companies face significant cash flow problems. So they may be collapsing, and there will be domino effect, and that will bring the economic damage into a bigger contraction, or even severe and longer and deeper. So I think this is something that we have to assess how effective they are. If you look at some of the advanced economy, the interest rate has, before this COVID-19, they already down to quite low level. Even though they push it to near zero, the effect will not be as big as effective compared to the 08-09 global financial crisis. So in terms of large fiscal stimulus package, obviously the crucial questions to ask, just like the monetary policy, whether the fiscal packages is effective or enough or not to reverse the downturn. And you look at most of the packages are quite similar in the sense that the first thing, the priority is to protect the industry, save job, and hence save the economy. So in terms of the size of the fiscal stimulus, depends on each individual country in terms of the ability to fund the deficit and also the debt level. I think we are comparing the direct fiscal injection directly coming from the balance sheet of the government side. I think for Malaysia, it's about 2.5% of GDP. The absolute level is about 35 billion out of the 266.1 billion mega stimulus package, which I will touch on later on. But basically, this is to tell you that it's important that the monetary policy and fiscal policy come in together to revive, to prevent the economy from a deep recession. I think obviously they are putting money into the pockets of consumers so that they can spend, but we are in a new normal, and the recovery in the spending will take some time. And when people start to spend, and there will be revenue coming along, and firm will have more confidence to borrow and expand. Okay, so that is the objective of why you need the monetary policy and fiscal policy coming together. So turning to Malaysia, in terms of, before we go to the actual real economy, just look at this table to give you the latest statistic of where Malaysia is standing now in terms of the COVID. I think Malaysia have done MCO 1, 2, 3 from 18 March until 3rd May. That's about 47 days. And then we move on to the different gear now on conditional MCO, where we reopen the economy in stages, except for those entertainment park, clubs, schools, even the hairdresser or barber. So I think by June 9, I think government will have to decide whether they will completely lift up all this, but continue to maintain the protective measures in terms of social distancing and in terms of the number of crowds for gathering. I think looking at the numbers of confirmed cases in terms of fatality rate, recovery rate, I think we have done quite well. I think the MCO had managed to flatten the COVID-19 curve, though in recent days we saw some increase in cluster. These are mainly confined to the immigration deport center, or these are the foreign workers and plus the illegal foreign workers. I think the point to make here is that Malaysia government don't do mass testing. We are doing a more targeted approach, looking into the new cluster, and then we'll try to confine it using the what we call the enhanced MCO, or the to make sure that the chain, the cluster would be break, yeah. Now, I think most important to put into perspective, it's important to see Malaysia initial condition before we go into the crisis. That's very important. I think look at the current position now. I think we have a very diversified economic sector. We have services, we have construction, manufacturing. We are not over concentrated in one sector. In terms of the product export markets, also diversified. Labor market also important, as before you go into the crisis, how strong your labor market condition. I think practically the time we were like almost full employment, because the unemployment rate is about 3.2%, and we have presence of the legal documented foreign workers about 2 million, then undocumented maybe close to 3 million, all in is about 5 million. So I think, and then wage growth has been steady, positive growth. And in terms of FDI, sources also diversify. We are not just over depend on China alone, but we have FDI from other countries, from the Europe, from the US and Japan and Korea. So all these are showing that we are not over concentration in terms of the investment flow. Yeah, and current account has been in surplus, though has narrowed, But I believe this year we still see a good surplus. First quarter, we still managed to about 2.5% of GDP. And in terms of the last point here is the banking system must be strong in terms of the capital buffer and liquidity buffer so that you can support the intermediation. You can continue to lend, yeah, with the support of the central bank in terms of releasing more liquidity to you to the cut in SRR, cut in OPR down to 2%. So, and for information, central bank has done very rigorous type of scenario study in terms of how much buffer they can withstand if the economy continue to in deep recession and take a longer while to recover. They've done the L-shaped recovery for the banking system, and they still have quite sufficient, very strong level of capital buffers and liquidity to continue to support the recovery. Yeah. So in terms of the COVID-19, I think this slide I want to share with you why it's important for the monetary policy to come in and also the fiscal side. I think we had seen the unemployment rate has surged to a new high, about 3.9%. In absolute number, it's about close to 610,000 person unemployed. But in normal days, in normal months, prior to the COVID-19, Malaysia unemployment rate, unemployment persons about close to 500,000. So we saw additional close to about 93,500 people in the month of March. Yeah, that is a number which to be watched. And I expect the unemployment rate to hit even higher, between 4.5% to 6.5% in the for this year. Maybe the second and third quarter will see a peak. So the vicious cycle is important to keep to prevent this from deepening, you know, from entrenchment and entrenched in the economy, because that will be bad for the demand side and lead to more job losses, income losses, and more company will fall. Yeah. So I think we have to track closely in terms of how responsive of the business and also consumer to the monetary policy and the fiscal policy. Yeah. So in terms of the response, obviously you heard about PRIHATIN. This is what I call the caring budget. PRIHATIN, considerate. We had about 266.1 billion, 18.4%. But if you look at this big size, it's not all coming from the government budget. The government budget is only 35 billion. The rest is coming from the GLC, the GLIC, the EPF, maybe, and also coming from Bank Negara, chip in from the EPF, and also the financial institution in terms of giving the loan moratorium. I think these are the, for the individual household, we have a direct cash handout. The one that stood out from here is the Bantuan PRIHATIN Nasional, which we gave about 1,000, 1,600 or 800 for those single individual. And we also allow employee to reduce their contribution rate of EPF from 4 to 7%. And also the monthly withdrawal of 500 ringgit per month. So these are the G's. In terms of business side, I think the one that focus more is the wage subsidy. I think why? Because you need to save the industry, save the business, then only you can save the workers and save the economy. So the government decided to give a 3-month wage subsidy. Depend on where you are, whether how many workers you employ. The maximum, if you have 200, then you get about 600. For those who are less than 75 workers, you get 1,002, and in the middle, you get about 800. So these are for 3 months, yeah. And also financing facility. This one's for healthcare, and then we have other small projects, or even government continue to emphasize that we need to have mega project. These are the MRT, ECL, the one that we work together with China in order to support the fiscal side. So in terms of the report card, I give you up to latest 17 May, you can see that 95% of the fiscal stimulus measure has implemented. And we are fortunate to have Minister of Finance on a weekly basis update us on in terms of the disbursement, how many approved, the money have reached the recipient. It's important. The size is matter, but also important to ensure the effectiveness implementation of the budget, of the PRIHATIN package, because if money, there are leakages along the way, or they are due to some what called the inflated cost, you may not see the real effect on the economy. And then whatever you spend, the growth will still be remain subdued. I think based on the estimation, the whole package could add at least 1 to 1.5 percentage point to the GDP. Yeah. So now on the impact on the business side of the economy, I think before that, I want to share with you where we are now, I think Malaysia, look at in terms of the transformation, we have witnessed significant transformation in terms of economy. The structure has evolved, have changed over the years. Since the 97-98 financial crisis until now, we went through the SARS, the GFC. You look at the structure of Malaysia, as I mentioned just now, services now is about 57.7% of GDP. It's higher now. And we saw private consumption continue to become the major contributor to the economy. Though Malaysia population about 33.7 million, but I think I'm not saying that we can only depend on domestic demand, but most importantly, we must equally help to increase the contribution of exports to the economy. Unfortunately, you look at the gross external trade, the combination of exports and imports had fallen significantly. From 1998, about 181.7% of GDP, now it's about 121.5%. The gross export alone is only about 65.3%. It shows that there's the structural weakness that we had now in terms of competitiveness in order to grow our export market share, given the rising competitor coming from those low wage or even the mid-tier competitors. I think there's a lot of things that capacity for us to grow our export capacity, not just in the those resource industry like the rubber glove, but also into new areas of growth, which I will go with you later on. In terms of the tourism receipt, is important again. I think with the COVID-19, we had these cross-border travelers, the foreign tourists are not coming. So you could see impact on the services side. Those are related to tourism, retail sector, hotels, and will be significantly impacted. So now, in terms of major economic partners, I think China emerged as the largest. In terms of total trade, percent share is 17.2%, okay? And followed by, you have the EU 9.5%, US 9%, and Japan 7%. I think this slide to show you external sector also equally important together with the domestic demand contribution to GDP. I think as this year, we expect the external side, the pickup will be very slow as people are adjusting to the new normal. So the near-term catalyst for growth will have to depend a lot on the domestic demand. So within the domestic demand, the only hopeful that is private consumption, because I think private investment will continue to collapse, will continue to remain weak, at least for the next 12 months. Yeah. So this, again, Malaysia side, if you look at the frequency data, except for first 2 months, I think March, we started to see the effect from the partial lockdown, the 2 weeks lockdown, second week of March. I think you look at the March data, everything has gone into contraction, yeah? Whether your export, import, your wholesale retail trade, and your production. Likewise for your services, construction, value work done, and also the loss of employment and unemployment rate. I think for your information, based on the EIS, the Employment Insurance System data, up to May 21st, we had about 29,000 people lost their job, okay? And 22% coming from manufacturing, 18% from wholesales, and then 62% are in the category of professional, manager, executive, and technician. If you break down by the average wages, 92% are between the those earning 1,000 to 8,000. So these are the B40 and the M40 will be significantly impacted. Yeah. Or inflation, we are in a deflation. April is about -2.9, which I don't think is a permanent trend. It's a temporary deflation trend, which are due to the collapse in oil price. So this is a very important slide again to show you the long-term investment had moderated since 2016, both in terms of FDI inflows, in terms of the Malaysian investment outside the country. But Malaysia is still a net importer of capital since 2016. I think there are a number of reasons for this trend. Firstly, is the uneven global recovery. Yeah, and also we have the competitiveness issue. We also face the uncertainty on the domestic front because of the change in government, and that lead to some very cautious on the domestic investor side in order to commit large-scale investment. I think for information, you look at the DDI, domestic direct investment, had been on a declining trend, partly because there's a low over assessors in the property sector, in all segments of property sector. Now, the MCO impact, counting the cost, I think, first of all, over economy, based on the Bank Negara estimate, even our own think tank estimate, we estimate per day that during MCO, the economy value output loss is about 2.4, and my number is even higher, 2.8 billion per day, okay? And as I mentioned, GDP 0.7%, the worst since the quarter. In terms of E-on-E sector, which is about 33.3% of total Malaysia export, also suffer losses quite big. These are the survey done from the MAYCHAMHKM, the Malaysia American Electronic Industry. Hospitality and tourism sector is the hardest, hit the most, and I believe this sector will be the last to recover. Yeah, given the restrained traveling, cross-border travel, and people are still very cautious of whether they want to travel, and these are impacted significantly, and a lot of major hotels either shut down permanently or close down for a while in order to consolidate their operations. Retail sector also equally badly hit in terms of the consumption side. I think we saw during the MCO there's a lot of online purchases, grocery for their daily necessity. That's something that the COVID had offers an opportunity for those who are willing to take one step further to use digitalization in order to increase their sales and offset the effect from all this MCO lockdown. And car sales, a big ticket item expected, had plunged significantly by 59.6% in March and further % in April. In number of units in April is only about 140 cars sold. Okay, so SME side is another big contributor to the country. I think about 98% is SME establishment. I think the government package will continue to cushion the SME from this downturn in terms of the income. You look at them, about 55.6% have zero income, and their cash flow level could be less than for about 1 month. Yeah, and construction side, unfortunately, construction side, not many have started operation. I think they are still wary about the SOP, whether the foreign worker testing, who will bear the cost, and these are still make the construction activity highly cautious in terms of the time of opening up. Labor market side, which I've already gone through, is likely to remain high. And fiscal side, Malaysia fiscal deficit will be higher this year. I'm looking between 4.5 to 5%. I think we are okay with that because even the government need to blow up a bit higher, given the need to sustain the recovery. And I believe if you compare Malaysia fiscal deficit to relative country, a lot of countries are in this situation where they need to blow up the deficit to counteract the impact of recession. And as long as you have a clear plan how to consolidate your fiscal position when the recovery is stronger, I believe the rating agency will give you time, the space for you to manage your fiscal position and debt level. Yeah. So this is the latest special survey done between 10 April to 1st May by our Department of Statistics. Obviously, you can see that the source of income totaled about 67.8%, no income at all. And what they had managed to go through the online platform, physical store, and they managed to recoup some of the revenue loss. In terms of survival duration, if you provide the full or half salary, I think about 53.4% can survive between 1 to 2 months. And what are the main challenges? Salary payment, no customer or rental payment. And you look at this estimated duration of recovery is about more than 6 months, which is in line with our own survey, our think tank. We show that about 50% of our business expect at least 6 months to recover. And that is considered quite a baseline conservative estimates. So I would give about 6 to 12 months. Yeah. Timeline. The three main assistance they needed from the government: finance, subsidy, tax reduction, and loan moratorium. So this is the one that I asked my staff to do a quick channel check and calling some of the major departmental store, major hotels. I think first thing to note, business have started operation about 70 to 80%. But in terms of employee, some are still at home and between home and the workplace, and about 10 million employees have returned to work. In terms of manufacturing activity, 60 and 80% already started their capacity, and we expect a higher capacity for those personal protective equipment, rubber gloves, electronics, food processing, and packaging materials. And I talked to some electronic companies in Penang. I think the orders are still quite good. These are the backlog orders, and may only last until June or July. So I think beyond that, the visibility is still quite low. Okay. The major shopping malls, we also check around. I think we call the major one. I think most of the 70-90% retailer have opened their business. The business hour as usual from 10 to 10, but most of them will close around 7 to 8. And the customer that come into the mall or went to their shop, I think now it's about 30% or 50% less compared to the pre-COVID or pre-MCO. Hotels, very sad. I think 8 out of 12 hotels have open business, but occupancy rate is very low. It's between 2 to 8%. Restaurant, dine-in was constrained by the space. I think because of the social distancing and also the protective measures that are in place, your number of table arrangement will be much lesser now. So in the past, maybe one day business, now is you have to wait for about 3-4 days or even 1 week to cover the full days. So I think people still prefer to take away. Construction sector side is not very good now. At the moment, 87.4% of the inspection site that they have conducted have yet to start operation as of May 14. I think this is an issue that we are working on now, because I also be part of the committee member of the Government National Economic Council working committee. And then we have raised this issue with our Minister of Economy, and he has been tasked to look into how to resolve this problem in the construction sector side. Consumer side is still wary about this, slowly returning, but I think it's still a long way compared to the prior to MCO. And then business are still face slow sales and high operating costs. As for now, you look at in terms of the employer apply for the wage subsidy. There's about 300,000 employer, and that they apply wage subsidy for 2.4 million employee. And also employee themselves also quite worried about their job prospect, their pay cut, no pay leave, layoff, and also 21st of May, we saw employee close to 330,000 employee apply for the government program, employment retention program, which is unpaid leave. Yeah, where you are paid about 600 ringgit per month for 6 months. And there's also 29,647 people lost their job. And these are based on EIS data, okay? And last year alone is about 74% of the total, yeah, which is quite alarming. So Malaysian economy, what's the prospect? What might the recovery look like? I think in terms of recovery, we must prepare for quite a long haul. I think in terms of the tough time ahead, I'm looking at the long U shape. I think there are risks that we have to watch out. A global recession, how deep, duration, or whether it's slow recovery until 2021 or 2022. We expect to see continued volatility in the global financial market. Commodity prices continue to moderate, CPO prices and oil price, that will be impact on us. Plunging crude oil prices, weakening domestic and business condition, and stock market likely to remain volatile, and ringgit continue to be in a low trajectory. And also they will be concerned about US-China trade war. Can be a trade war, can be a technology war. I think these are concerns that will likely to undermine the recovery prospect of the global economy. Yeah. So for my growth scenario for this year and next year, my base case is -3% GDP. Next year likely to be 4.5 to 5%. Of course, there is still a potential that we can have a bounce back strongly, close to 7.5%, because you must understand this year is due to the MCO impact, you know, the lockdown effect. So you normalize it, your growth can be much higher. If you look at in the past where we have a recession, then the second year rebound will be quite strong. And the downside could be as high as -7%, closest to the 97-98 financial crisis. So in terms of shape, it's a long U shape. I think in the middle, looking at there's some permanent loss of output. And in fact, based on this year forecast, we are regress in terms of GDP, regress 4 years back down the road. Yeah, I mean backward 4 years. So it take a longer time for us to come back, yeah, and to reach our what you call the high income target. So my base case, second quarter, I expect the GDP will contract by at least 11.5%. So based on a base case full year GDP of -3%, second quarter is -11.5%. I think the contraction will peak in second quarter and smaller contraction in third quarter before reverting to a positive 2.2. This is the base case scenario. So you look at some of the latest information up to April, we can see a bigger contraction in terms of electricity generation. Even some of the regional country export has continued to decline. Yeah. So now, I also give you a comparison in terms of the duration and depth of economic recession and recovery for Malaysia. I think we look at the 97, 98. You know, it took about 5 consecutive quarters of decline. Yeah, that year was a very bad year because currency crisis. You have overinflated, overheated in the stock market, in the property market. Everyone just went into property and went into stock market, and then you see a big plunge, and there's a massive income retrenchment, massive income decline, and you saw a big plunge in the consumption side. On the SARS side, I think at the beginning of the COVID, everyone thought that it could be something similar like SARS, but turned out to be this is much even more vicious. I mean, in terms of the duration, in terms of the widespread of the COVID-19. At the time, SARS, we still managed to see a positive growth, and we just saw a small moderation in the GDP growth. Financial crisis, global financial crisis, I think we stand much better, stronger compared to 97, 98, thanks to our central bank in terms of the capitalize the bank, you know, we are more prudent, risk management side sound. I think the economy just contracted -1.5, and to 2010, we rebounded strongly 7.4%. So now we are in this stage, 2020, yeah. So look at my projection. First quarter is a estimate, I mean, the official number, 0.7. Second quarter, I'm looking at -11.5. Third quarter recover to -3.4. So it's just a long yield. It's not rather a V-shaped recovery. Okay. And then this is a slide to share with you why how we look at product consumption, because as I told you, product consumption now is the major contributor to the economy. And I try to compare what we have done so far in terms of the monetary measures, in terms of the other fiscal measures to support the product consumption. I think obviously this time around we have more, we gave more things now in terms of the monetary and financial support, like loan moratorium, EPF withdrawal, cash and out is bigger compared to 08, 09. So I think my estimates for product consumption base case about 1.5%. But though the concern is still about the unemployment rate, I think the government recovery plan will continue to address on this issue of how to save job and at the same time how to save the business side. Yeah, this is quite an interesting slide to compare. On the investment side, it has been trending down. Unfortunately, you look at the private investment growth from 2017 9%, now down to 2019 1.5%, and this year I'm looking at -11.4%. Yeah, so the percentage of GDP also have been coming down, and this slide will tell you some story about the DDI and FDI. If you look at the blue bar, I think the DDI number has been trending down, which raised the concern that while we encouraging FDI, but Malaysia will have to push for more DDI, especially in the SME space. So these are the sector. All will decline except services, which I don't think I need to go through. The services, I'm looking at -0.8%, manufacturing -8%, agriculture -3%, construction -1%, and also the mining -3.8%. Yeah. In terms of the current account surplus, I don't think we'll go into a twin deficit in the government side and also the BOP side, as I think import compression will help to keep the current account in surplus. And first quarter alone, our export is about 1.1%, but most of the major products are still declining. Yeah. So is there a risk of sustained deflation? Again, I believe that we are in a temporary deflation state, given the impact from the oil price. And if you look at the current CPI basket, only 20% of the goods we saw a decrease in the prices. In fact, we saw some increase in the prices of the vegetables because of MCO impacted the supply side, and demand is still quite strong. My ringgit forecast for this year is 4.2 to 4.5. Yeah, and I'm looking at OPR is 2% for now. Of course, there is still room for them to cut. I think the most they can cut another 25 to 50 basis points. I don't think Bank Negara will push it to negative like other central bank, given that there are other policy tools for the central bank to liquefy the economy and also to support the banks in intermediation. Yeah, inflation full year I'm looking at about -0.5 to -1. Fiscal deficit may not matter much in economic recession. I think I already mentioned. I think of course sovereign ratings still matter, but we also have to look at in perspective with other countries which also facing the same problem in order to counter the effect from the recession from the fiscal side. So, but for information, I think if you look at government debt to GDP has now more than the 55% of the self-imposed administrative ceiling. Indication they may have to relook at this self-imposed ceiling, maybe have to revise higher, or they have to look into some of the statutory debt limit in some external loans and the domestic side, whether they can borrow more. So some of the revenue enhancement coming from this 2020 budget, they have asked for more money from Petronas, Bank Negara, Khazanah, MCMC, KWAP. I think the government may have to relook at the GST, reintroduce it back, maybe start from 3 to 4%. It could be unpopular, but I think if you know how to educate and go down, and in terms of the enforcement, in terms of make sure that the low income will not be badly affected, I'm sure people are still able to manage the GST impact on the cost of living and inflation. There could be continued some privatization of government asset, sales of asset that help to improve the help to stable the budget deficit. And if you look at the current subsidy now, we are not in the subsidy mode because the price has fallen, and that helped to save government about 3 billion subsidy. Now, in terms of economic recovery plan, they are short, medium, and long term. And from the very beginning, the government has adopted 6 approaches. I think we are in the stage of recovery. The resolve is to flatten the COVID-19 curve. Resilient is the 266.1 billion package to shelter the economy, the business, the people, and also the fortified economy. And restart, that was under the conditional MCO. We are in here, restart, and recovery stage. So I think there are a few important dates to watch. I think 1st June, if there's no change in the timeline, Prime Minister will announce a short-term recovery plan, which is prepared by the Minister of Finance. Yeah. Between July and August, there will come a economic recovery plan which cover the medium long term. And the MITI, Ministry of International Trade Investment, will launch the 4th Malaysia Industrial Master Plan, which we are also involved. I think we are involved in providing a lot of inputs into all this plan. And early November will be the national budget. That is the budget which most investors will be watch out for in terms of the next 12 months. In terms of the fiscal direction, in terms of what are the measures that can be rolled out in order to support the economy over the next 12 months. And the one that is a long-term plan, you call the 12 Malaysia plan, will be in January. The next sitting for the Parliament session will be between July 13 to 25th August. That's about 25 days. So I think they will cover some of the economic recovery plan. So what are the things should be in the focus? I think these are the proposals that we have submitted to the Minister of Finance, to the Minister of Economy, and also the MITI side. I think what we want them to see now, the immediate term, is to restore confidence on the economy and political stability, reassure policy continuity, swiftly implement the targeted fiscal spending, ease the business cash flow problem, sustain the private consumption, ease unemployment, revitalize the investment, digitalization and automation, reskilling and upskilling workforce, uplift the export capacity, and last one, we think that it's time for the government to look at the property sector. It's time to rejuvenate the property sector, which has been in doldrum for the last 5 years since 2015 due to oversupply, overhang. So I think there are measures, hopefully they will come along in the short and medium term for the property sector. So in terms of the recovery plan, which we have prepared a very comprehensive report, medium long term, submitted to the various ministers, including the Prime Minister himself. I think firstly, we want them to look at fiscal stability and growth stabilization pact, unlocking new sources of growth, reinforce the competitiveness and productivity nexus, going into smart and digital technology, and upskilling workforce. I think the thing that we want the government is to rebuild the trust. Yeah, as you know, it's a PN government. PN government is just about 2 months old. I think we want to see continued implementation of the credible reform in the political side, institutional capacity, fiscal side, political stability. And I think far most important is to ensure that everything will be more transparent in terms of the competitive tender, fiscal transparency, and also anti-corruption. Yeah? So these are things that we hope the new government will continue to place emphasis on. In terms of the consumer and investor confidence, political stability, these are intertwined, macro and political stability. I think in order to encourage, to assure that investor will continue to put money in Malaysia, and also the domestic investor will not pull their money out, I think important to ensure that we have continuity in the political development side. In terms of policy side, I think investors don't like uncertainty, especially if the policy are keep on flip-flopping. That hurts business and worrying investor. So the other on FDI and DDI, we also fortunate to have a webinar with the CEO of the MIDA. That was a very good one. I think they have put forward a lot of measures to the government in the coming short-term and medium-term recovery. Among the issue they are looking at on how to facilitate, how to expedite the pre-approval of the investment package in Malaysia. So they have saw a lot of the interest from US, from the Europe country, even from Korea and from other countries that willing to relocate from China back to onshore, from the onshoring become a reshoring. These are the trend they are looking at now. They are targeting quite a number of big companies. Hopefully all this will be crystallized, and that will help to boost up the FDI and also support the domestic investment. So I think there are issues which they can look at the medium term, reduce the corporate tax rate, domestic investment strategic fund, industry forward, reinvestment allowance. These are things they are looking at. Whether they will implement immediately, that will depend on what sort of balancing they hope to achieve in terms of the quality of investment they encourage. And this is a very interesting slide. You can see from here, in terms of the approved investment, domestic investment has been shrinking, yeah, in terms of the absolute level, yeah. And on the new investment, we had also opportunity to have a webinar with the Minister of the Technology, Encik Khairi Jamaluddin. I think one aspect that we talk about is about the digitalization. So these are the new investment, I think, in the high-tech area, whether it's renewable energy, climate change, eco-green, big data, 5G, charging station for the new energy vehicles, solar energy, healthcare, and blah, blah. And there are a few plans that are in the pipeline. The first one is the 21 billion National Fiberization and Connectivity Plan. I think they will start 5 billion this year. Hopefully that will be expedited. I think the COVID has exposed a lot of weakness in the Malaysia digital landscape. Just the government services alone, I think about 30 to 40% of the government are into the service online. So that reflects the weakness of the whole digital plan, which I think the government is also looking into formulate a new digitalization plan, and likely to be rolled in July or August, okay? And the other thing is the National E-commerce Strategic Roadmap. So the other thing is about food, halal industry, smart agriculture. I think the focus now is on the food, that not just for the self-sufficiency, but also there's the potential to extract more value. We cannot just depend on all this palm oil for the foreign exchange earning, and that if you can grow more food cash crop, not only help to improve the B40 household income, but also eventually will help to more diversify Malaysia in terms of the food sources and in terms of food technology. And this is something that I believe that if you can have the right strategy, right framework, and use the digital or smart technology to extract more value from agriculture. In addition to those rubber product, palm oil, and also the wood and wood-based product. So with that, I conclude my presentation. I will take Q&A from here.